All right, everybody, welcome into the Auburn Live Basketball Show. That's right, it's a basketball show. Appreciate everybody for joining us. I'm Justin Hokanson. With me, a familiar face. If you've seen the call-in show, you know him, you love him, Mr. JHead. What's up, man?
What's up, brother? How you doing tonight, Hope?
Good. Just, people ask me if I'm busy these days, and I say, yeah. Yeah, I'm busy. It's a weird busy. It's not every day is, today, Monday, we're recording this Monday night. We'll put it just, not every day is crazy writing, but you're just always on alert right now with the portal and offers. Any point, anytime, something could happen. So that makes you very busy.
Sure. And then the reason that we're here tonight to discuss basketball, Bruce Pearl, this team, 7 games in, like me and you had talked about in the pre-show, and a lot going on there as well. So you got your hands full, buddy.
Yeah, here for a little bit. It's a little double dipping with all this stuff going on. All right, so we're going to talk some basketball. We're going to get into that real quick. Shout out to Session Cocktail, sponsor of all the Auburn Live shows that I do anyway. Session Cocktail, downtown Auburn. Go check them out, Magnolia Avenue, right there next to Taco Mama. I always give Taco Mama a shout out. I just realized because I say they're next to them. I need to stop doing that because Taco Mama doesn't give me anything. So I need to stop saying that. So go check out Session. They just got a new menu for like the holiday season with some awesome drinks. I had a thing called the late night breakfast. It's a drink called the late night breakfast. It's a bourbon drink and it's got like everything that's in it. It's got egg. Dude, it is insanely good. And then they have like an eggnog that's fantastic that I'm just going to be like, can you bottle that up and take it home? But anyway, they just got a whole new menu. It's really awesome. Go check them out. They got, the booth seating and the bar seating. I run into a bunch of people that are members of Auburn Live there. Actually, Friday night before the Iron Bowl, ran into some people that are members of Auburn Live and said, hey, and we're trying Session out for the first time. So I appreciate them. So if you go in, tell them, find Hunter, who's the owner, or Joe, or Avery, the managers, just find them. Tell them you appreciate them. You heard about them through Auburn Live. That would be awesome for us. But go check them out. Great drinks, great environment, atmosphere, all that good stuff. Happy hour 4 to 6. So go check out Session in downtown Auburn if you get the chance. That would be awesome. All right, JHead, let's talk some hoops. So for everybody listening, we're going to do this once a week. The goal is to record. The goal is to put one up every Tuesday morning. Where we can kind of recap the previous couple games, look ahead to the previous couple games. Obviously, once you get into SEC play, it'll sort of be 2 a week and it'll work out pretty good. But we're trying to do 1 a week where we can kind of recap a little bit, look ahead a little bit to what's going on. Since this is our first one, let's just kind of keep it broad, man. Auburn's 7 games in, tough loss at App State, where they just didn't play well, didn't handle the environment really well. You look at App State, the new net rankings come out. App State's 47th in the first net rankings. So that means that the loss to App State and the loss to Baylor are quad 1 losses right now. So,
yes.
The world's, the sky's not falling. They didn't look great, but that's not a bad loss. And it likely won't be a bad loss. It's just a missed opportunity like the Baylor one was. But what do you sort of make of this Auburn team 7 games in, new roster, what we heard might be different from last year? What do you see that's different? What do you see that you like that you can build on? Just kind of give me some thoughts to get this thing rolling.
So just a team that's still really trying to come together, Justin. You've seen some inconsistency. You've seen some real highlights. Obviously, Janai Broome has continued on with his pace that he started last year, which carried over to the NBA Combine. And now he's really kind of starting to put it together and come into his own. 2 straight games of going over 20-plus points. And really, he's kind of setting himself up to be an all-SEC type season. Other players, Aiden Holloway started off fantastic. He's kind of hit a wall a little bit, making some of that adjustment. They're playing him a little bit differently defensively with how they're trapping him some and forcing the ball out of his hand, making him be a little bit more of a facilitator than actually a scorer at this point. And then the adjustment by Chad Baker-Mazzaro and Denver Jones has continued on, and then Chaney Johnson. You're just seeing guys that are coming up to a different level of basketball that are kind of getting their feel somewhat. And you've seen some real highs for them. Mazzaro has been fantastic off the bench and really with kind of getting into the lane and being able to get to the cup and create some things. The shooting stroke hasn't quite come through yet, but you see really good form from him. So I'm excited what he can do moving forward. Denver has been a little bit more of a mixed bag. And then obviously Chaney is a fantastic athlete, great kid that just still kind of finding his way. But you see a team in transition, Justin. And I think that's something you talked about moving into this season is what was it going to be like getting through the non-conference? Can you get through unscathed enough that when you get into conference play, you're ready to kind of attack that and go into it and be that top half of the team league that we've come to expect from a Bruce Pearl team?
Yeah, I was looking at just kind of some stats briefly, just so people kind of understand where Auburn's at. I look at T-Rank, which is barttorvik.com, the T-Rank analytics, just because I don't have to pay him like I do Ken Palm. But they're very, very close. Like it's essentially the same kind of stuff. He's got Auburn's offensive efficiency at 34th in the nation, their defensive efficiency at 14th. The defense was playing pretty well. App State was a little bit of a step back in some areas, but the defense has actually been probably a little bit better than we thought and better than Bruce Pearl kind of thought so far. Offensive rebounding, they're top 20 in the country. They're getting to the free throw line a lot, but their free throw rate, Auburn's free throw rate is 39th in the country. Unfortunately, their free throw percentage is 233rd. So maybe convert a little bit more when you're one of the best teams in the country getting there. But a lot of the defensive categories are pretty good. They're fouling too much, which is something we've written about. They're fouling over 20 times a game. It's going to change environment, officiating crew, but that's something they got to get a handle on. Teams are shooting 76% from the free throw line against Auburn, but there's fouling too much. But all in all, not bad, not a bad start.
No.
But they have lost to the two best teams they've played. Granted, neither one of them was in Auburn Arena, Neville Arena, I should say. Yeah, it's in it. Janai Broom's been great the last two games. Aiden Holloway's kind of struggled the last two games, but that's to be expected. McDonald's All-American or not, he's a true freshman point guard, and it's just the physicality and just everything that goes with that. He's going to have some off games. I think if we want to talk concerns first, we can talk some concerns, and then we'll talk some positives. We'll just do it that way. It doesn't matter what order, but I think the two guard position is something that to me so far has been kind of worrisome. I would say worrisome. I'm not freaking out, but
no.
Denver Jones hasn't quite been what I think they thought he would be or what I hoped he would be. He's a good athlete. He did well in off-season testing. Like he's got some athletic ability, but he's had quite a number of games where on offense he kind of disappeared. And he wasn't brought here to do that. He was brought here to be a shooter and score. He scored 20 points a game last year, and he's had games where he didn't score against App State, 0 points. And your starting two guard can't do that. He can't, for whatever reason that is, whether they need to try to isolate him and get him some looks on purpose, or whether he needs to be more aggressive or whatever. Because KD Johnson behind him is so inconsistent. Denver can't also be inconsistent for me. So that position's probably my biggest concern so far. Point guard, we kind of know the limitations there. I think Aiden will get better. Janai, you know what you get. Jalen is going to kind of be himself, where he's going to look great one game and he's going to sort of play down to his competition another game. You sort of know what you get there. Chad Baker's coming on. I wish we could get more from Chris Moore, but that kind of is what it is. Denver's probably is the guy that I thought you would get more of, and is probably been the most disappointing so far. That position has got to produce more on both ends of the floor, but you just can't have a game where you're starting two guard and your backup two guard go scoreless. That's got to change for me.
I agree. And let's look at the last game against Appalachian State. And as you mentioned, it was on the road in Boone. Tough environment to play in, smaller gym, different officiating crew than what you're accustomed to. And like you said, it's not a bad loss. Look, it's on the road. It's a net team you said was
47 as of right now.
47. Okay, so that's a quad one loss.
Yeah.
You never want to lose to a group of 5 team, but if you do, you want it to be in their place when it's a situation that's going to boost that level of opponent. So, but you can't go 9 of 19 from the foul line, and you can't go 3 of 27 from 3. That's what we thought this team was going to be different. We thought they were going to be more efficient from distance this season. And they were at the very beginning of the year. When you talk about positives, that Baylor game really opened my eyes as far as offensively what this team could be. And you haven't really seen that the last couple of games. And I don't think that's permanent. I think some of that's going to reverse itself. They're in a little bit of a slump. But even Auburn's best teams under Pearl have gone into a little bit. The Final Four team went into a little bit of a slump shooting the ball very early in the season and then picked it up coming late. So those things go in waves, and I would expect for us to get that kind of corrected somewhat. Beyond that, I really kind of like offensively. And I think you hit it. Me and you are very alike as far as how we see this team, as far as where maybe some of my concerns are. And it's not major concerns. We're too early for it to be major concerns, but just
Right.
kind of like things I've noticed. But as far as things I've liked, I've really liked how they've kind of stretched the floor with a 5-man out offense. I think that's been nice. They've also run a nice blend of the flex cut offense that Pearl has traditionally run with some of those back cuts involved. Defensively, they've been significantly better than what I thought they would be. I thought that's where they would struggle given some of the new pieces that you brought in. But from a team defense standpoint, I thought they were better. Even though they had to switch to zone against Appalachian State late, they kind of shrunk into a 2-3 zone, which really allowed them to get some rim protection. I think man-to-man, they've held up well, Justin. I really do. So a lot of positives with this team, and we're going to find out more about them. You get a big 3-game stretch coming up where you've got Indiana in what used to be Phillips Arena. I think they're calling it State Farm Arena now.
Yep.
You get UNC Asheville, who's a perennial tournament team, in Huntsville, so another neutral site game. And then you get SC at home, which is probably going to be the best team you play all non-conference. So three big games for you to really show, okay, this is where we are right now. This is where we can be going into SEC play. So just a really pivotal stretch for this team.
Yeah, you mentioned 3-point shooting. They shot 9 of 19 against Baylor, not bad. 11 of 32 against Southeastern Louisiana, not terrible. 9 of 20 against Notre Dame, pretty good. 8 of 24 against St. Bonaventure, okay. But that's 9, 11, 9, and 8 threes. And then the last 3 games, they've hit 6, 2, and 3. In the last 2 games, they're 5 of 43 from 3. So the last 2 games have been just a disaster from the 3-point line. That's really been the one major drawback these last 2 games of scoring. They've done a lot of things well. They still get to the free throw line and stuff like that, but I don't know what's going on these last 2 games because, yeah, shooting wise, they should be better. They're supposed to be better. I think they will be better. Bruce has said they're going to be better, but right now they rank they're shooting 29.6% from 3. That's 286th in the country. They are better than that. Whether it's Denver Jones, whether it's Chad Baker, Trey Donaldson, I think has been good.
Yes.
Part of that, Aiden, the last 2 games has gone over. That hasn't helped. And he shoots a high number. He's shooting 4 or 5 a game or something like that. So got to figure out the shooting and what's going on there. I remember Bruce mentioning about Denver specifically, and I wonder how it translates to to Chad Baker, to Aiden Holloway, as well as they're playing more defense than they're used to. They're playing harder defense than they're used to. How does that translate to the offensive end? I thought it was a good point on Denver. I would assume that could probably go for somebody like Chad Baker. That probably could go for somebody like Aiden Holloway, where defensively you're doing more than you've ever done before. How does that translate offensively, specifically shooting the 3? So let's just for now assume that will right itself, and they'll get back to shooting, pretty well. I love the depth. I love what they're doing from a depth perspective. That Bruce is not kidding when he says like I think it's their strength. Now, Bruce makes a funny point where he says the great thing about our team is we don't drop off when we go to the bench. The worst thing about our team is we don't drop off when we go to the bench, which is a funny but fair point. He's like, I wish on one hand you would kind of like to drop off because that means you have a starting 5, but then again, if you don't, that means you're bench. So it's a give and take. I like the depth. I like what it gives Auburn. But it only works if your starters, you can't have guys. I think Denver didn't score against App State. Chris Moore didn't score against App State. And Aiden barely did he score? Anyway, you had like 3 starters in that game that just basically didn't produce anything offensively. And that you can't do that, then that negates whatever your bench is. Then if they don't do that, well, then your bench has got to come off and pick you up, and then you're balancing out. They need those starters to be solid. Then you bring these bench guys on, and you've got 10 guys. You're running 10, and you've got guys that can score and spread it out. But I do like the depth. I think that will help them in SEC play because they don't have a stud. Janai can be. We've seen him,
Mm-hmm.
but even Janai relies on other people. You got to feed it to him. You got to consistently get it to him. And there will be games where he's not super aggressive, and he goes against athletic big man that will negate him a little bit. But I do love the depth. That is their strength. They just got to figure out some ways to be consistent shooting the basketball from the outside. That's been a shocking development the last week, man.
It has. And look, these are teachable moments in a situation where you're not going to be overly penalized, because if App State will continue to play at the pace that they're playing at, and I think they are in probably a Sunbelt league where they can really kind of cement themselves as a top echelon team there. So you're not going to take too much of a tumble when you kind of get into conference play from that standpoint of a loss. But you're talking young guys, as you mentioned, a freshman that was playing against high school guys last year that's really getting tested for the first time at the college level in a true road environment, which is completely different. Neutral sites are great, but there's nothing like going into somebody else's gym for the first time and you're having to get accustomed to being played a different way. Same thing with Chad Baker-Mazzaro coming up from JUCO. Like you said, I'm not trying to take shots at the junior college basketball game, but defense is not one of the things that is done at a very high level.
Right.
You get a lot of offensive basketball. It's very AAU-ish at the JUCO ranks. So that's somewhat of, like you said, him exerting energy in different parts of the game, where he was very offensively efficient last year, playing at a lower level in the junior college ranks. And then Denver, he's always kind of been the guy, right? Like for Florida International, he has been the go-to scorer. Here, it's some of an adjustment for him to learn to be more of a secondary option. And I think he struggled with that. Some of the athletes that he's seen are a little bit quicker than probably what he's anticipated, what he's accustomed to at Florida International. I think he'll get there. I see enough from him that makes me think his athleticism transfers to the SEC caliber athlete that he's going to compete against. But he's just got to be a little bit more efficient, get into more of a groove. You can see where he's forcing action somewhat, right? Like he's just trying to get something going. And I think he's got to let the game come to him. And Bruce will do some things. He'll put him in ball screen action. He'll do some things to kind of loosen it up somewhat. And once he sees a few shots go in, I think he'll kind of see the light go on, specifically if he gets hot against one of these next three opponents, where it's really kind of a raise in the competition level that you're going to see.
Yeah, one of the things, kind of looking through the stats as we sort of talk about where Auburn is through 7 games, you mentioned they've got Indiana coming up. I'll be at that one in Atlanta. And then they've got UNC Asheville and Huntsville, USC, and then you've got Alabama State, Chattanooga, and Penn, all in Neville Arena before you start SEC play. So next 3 games are big. They really need to win them all and try to go, 11-2 into SEC play. But you kind of look at where this team's struggling. We talk about defensively a little bit. One of the other areas where they're struggling is offensive rebounding. They're giving up over 11 offensive rebounds a game, which is bottom 30% in the country. That is leading to the opponents scoring over 18% of the opponent's points is coming from second chance, which is for as Auburn is concerned, is bottom 7% in the country. So they're giving up offensive boards, and that's leading to second chance points. 1 out of every 5 points they score is a second chance point from the opponent, which probably goes back to an effort, energy kind of thing, blocking out, not giving up offensive rebounds. And then if they do, locking back in and defending and then not giving up points. There's things like that are hurting them. You toss in the amount of fouls and free throws that opponents are getting. And just some discipline things, I think, defensively. They've got all the length and athletic ability. Man,
Yes.
Look how long Chad Baker is. You know what you need with Janai. Dylan can block shots. Trey's a physical guy. KD can wreak havoc sometimes, and sometimes he'll forget to guard somebody, but that's KD. Even Denver's a good athlete. Like they've got good length. Chris Moore gets after it. Bruce is never going to put a bad defensive team on the court. This team just maybe has to go a little further to get there. But just kind of some focus things, I think, on defense would go a long way in improving that side of the floor.
I agree. And he's going to have their attention coming out of that loss. There's no way that they're going into the Indiana game losing against App State where Bruce won't have their absolute attention, and he'll demand it. Bruce is the kind of guy that he doesn't tolerate losing, not in that fashion. And you can tell that it irritated him in some of the post-game comments that he made particularly with how their guards got after our guards. And that was a challenge to them. Sometimes when coaches like Bruce that have the voice that he has, when he's speaking to the media, he's not just speaking to you guys, he's speaking to his team. And you could see that in some of his post-game comments, trying to get through to them to let them know, like, hey, this is unacceptable, guys. And we're going to get better, but you got to trust me.
What do you make of the point guard play so far between Aiden and Trey? Good moments for both. App State was a good example, right? Aiden doesn't play well. Trey, I think, scored 12 off the bench. It's nice to have a point guard who, like Trey, who can come off and knock down some shots. The crazy thing about Aiden is he started fast. He's slowed down a little bit over the last 2 games offensively, but he is still number 1 on the team in plus minus. Auburn is 93 points better for the season when he's on the floor. That is 18 points better than the next person, which is actually Chaney. And then it's 22 points better than the third place guy, which is Denver Jones. But it's kind of crazy. Even in some of these games where Aiden has struggled, his plus minus is still fantastic. Now, plus minus doesn't mean everything.
Sure.
But it's a decent indicator, and it's just interesting how it's been so good with him in there, even when he struggled. So good things tend to happen. Trey has come off the bench and done his part. But what's sort of your take on that dynamic so far and like starting to look ahead to SEC play and how these guards are going to get up in them and Aiden's going to be challenged? And what do you think that dynamic can be between those guys from what you've seen so far?
So been more impressed with Trey than I thought I would be at this point. He has truly played better. Now, he started off a little bit slow, didn't love everything I saw in the Baylor game. Thought they exposed him somewhat, but that was a tough night for him. I think he had just lost his grandfather. So there were obviously some other things going on there, but been very impressed with how he's handled things, particularly coming off the bench. You talked about the plus minus with Aiden, and I think it speaks to the volume with which teams respect his play because they just play him differently, which means that other guys are, the opportunities are a little bit different for them. The spacing is different when he's on the floor, and you can't necessarily collapse on other players when he's there because you know what he's capable of. Now, the thing with him, obviously, is that you can't fall into the trap of trying to force action. You have to continue to be patient. Let the game come to you. And that's such a hard thing for young guards to learn, Justin, is letting the game come to them and fall into the flow of the game and not try to dictate things. Bruce will get his attention. You've got a great set of assistant coaches in Ira Bowman. Corey's fantastic. You're talking about a guy that played point guard in the NBA. He knows what it's like to be in Aiden's position. And then obviously Stephen Pearl is extremely well-versed. You've got and 2 other guys that were promoted in Chad and excuse me, I'm losing track on Burgomaster. Yeah, but they're all great at what they do. They're going to be able to set some things up schematically with how they scout and what the stuff they're going to run that's going to put him in position to score and to facilitate and be a creator for other people. He's just got to trust what they put in place. And right now you're kind of seeing the speed of the game, how guys are playing him. He's just got to trust the adjustments that they put in place for him. And once he starts to do that and realize that he can do things a little bit differently against double teams, how they're trapping him some, that he's, they'll free up, things will change. And then, basketball is a game of adjustments, Justin. It always has been, it always will be. And so I'm interested to see what the counterpunch is as we go into that Indiana game. That's really, to me, he's had 2 really rough games. Okay, how do you bounce back? Because that's going to tell me a lot about him moving forward and what he's going to be able to do in SEC play.
Yeah, I am interested to see how he bounced back. He's not going to be some defensive stopper. Like, that's not Aiden. It's not going to be him this year anyway.
No.
He's going to just hold his own in there defensively. He's not going to call steals or get up in people's grills the way KD can at times. And but he's not playing poorly on that end of the floor. He's just got to kind of find his shooting stroke back a little bit. And I do love the potential of him and Trey. I think they do things differently. They do things well differently. And I like Trey's physicality. I like his toughness off the bench. And he's a guy that I think can handle coming off the bench and being a good player. And so, yeah, you mentioned that Indiana game. Indiana's not having their traditional great season. They're not ranked all that highly. It's a game Auburn should go win. But what's funny is, we saw the reaction on the message board about the App State game, and I get it. They struggle to hit shots. They lose a road game to a team that's inferior to them. But you look across the SEC right now. If you look at the T rank, the analytic rankings, you've got Tennessee 9,
Yes,
Bama 12, Auburn 16, Kentucky 17, A&M 22, Florida 23. Like it's competitive and crowded right there. But give Auburn some credit. And so far, it's early in the year. They lost a true road game to App State, and they lost a squeaker to Baylor in which they led at halftime. Let's pump the brakes on kind of trying to assess what this team's going to be. I mentioned it in the primer before the App State game as things I'm thinking about going into the game, and that is the App State game reminds me of, listen, that Final Four team. Was anybody thinking that team was going to the Final Four when they lost in Raleigh to NC State? No,
absolutely not.
It looked terrible in that game. They also, I think they played a UAB and won at UAB, but at that year too. But I think that was really ugly, if I remember right. Could have even been an overtime win at UAB. They, the team that finished second in the league was Samir Dowdy and Isaac Okoro. Needed a tip in from Okoro in the last seconds to win at South Alabama. That South Alabama team is not as good as what Auburn just lost to against App State. And that team that needed a tip in at South Alabama finished second. They were the number 2 seed going into the SEC tournament. And then, of course, COVID happened. Just because they lost at App State, like we've seen some of this before. And then Auburn's had competitive wins, whether it's Murray State, whether it's at St. Louis. That same Samir Dowdy team won at St. Louis in a brawl. Like they've had some of these type mid-major type games where they're a little ugly, but they've won them. This one didn't turn out that way and they lose it. But I think this team is there's just still a lot of growth that's got to happen with these guys. My thing with them is the talent's there for the most part. And maybe I wish they were better at a couple positions, but there's a good collection of talent. My thing is with basketball, it's always about chemistry and role players and understanding your role and coming off the bench and doing your job and complimenting the other guys on the court. It's just, there's so much about that in basketball. And with this team, I think they're just still trying to figure that out. And it's about finding an alpha. It's about finding leaders. I think they're still searching a little bit. I think Janai is kind of that player, but I don't know that he's that personality. I don't know who that guy is. That's kind of one of the other things that I'm looking for with this team is there a guy that when he speaks, everybody shuts up and listens? I don't know. Jabari was that guy as a freshman because you're just like, that's a bad man. Walker was a little soft-spoken, but Walker had that intensity and he had the game to back it up. I don't know who that is on this team yet. If they start to struggle on the road or whatever's happening, who rights the ship? Who do they, Janai's kind of a guy that is sort of developing into a guy you could dump it down to and get a bucket. But just the leadership of the team, who is going to step up as the adversity hits, which is what they experienced Sunday, and help right the ship in practice the next week and set the tone. That is so big. I mean, I get a chance to go to a lot of these practices, and I'm just telling you, like, they're intense, but it just matters. Those next practices, who sets the tone in those practices and how they follow that person or persons is big. And I still think they're kind of searching for that one or two guys that can carry that. You know what I mean?
I could not agree with you more. Basketball is a game of matchups, and it's a game of guys, sometimes even of individuals. And that's what you were talking about, of guys like a Jared Harper that just had full command. Even as a freshman, you could see that he had the trust of his teammates, and they knew that when push came to shove and you needed to get a bucket, he could go get it done. A guy that was an absolute leader. I think you have guys that have the potential to do that. I mean, Denver Jones is a guy that did that at FIU. Will he do that for this team? I honestly don't know. Aiden Holloway could be that guy. He is easily the most skilled guard we have on this team. can he mature to the point that this team really trusts him and will follow him in difficult times? That's what you don't know, Justin. And you're right. When the next practice you go to, who's leading this team? Who's setting the path forward? Who's leading by example? And the great thing is the character of this team. You have so many good character kids. I don't know last year, and I'm not bad mouthing anybody when I say this, but I feel like the team last year, as much as they fought and clawed and scrapped for every victory, I don't know that there was a great synergy around that team. I do think there's good synergy around this team, and there are guys that are rooting for each other in the locker room and that they want them to pick it up and they want to play well. So you're just seeing an inconsistent team right now of a lot of parts coming together, and people just need to not put too much emphasis on one game. You see it in tournament play all the time. Like you said, any team can get hot. App State got hot in that game, and they played us in their house and they took advantage. But you also saw a similar thing happen to Arkansas not too long ago when they lost to UNC Greensboro, turned back around and beat Duke in their place. Okay. And that's a team that's as much transition as Auburn is right now. So understand that while, yes, it's not a great look, it's not a terrible loss either. There's a lot that can come out of that from a teachable moment standpoint. And I think this team will be better because of it. Sometimes it is easier, and you hear football coaches say this all the time. I believe this to be true in any sport, that you can coach guys harder coming out of a loss than you can out of a win. You get more out of it. And I think they'll get a lot out of this loss in a true road environment and learn how to lean on each other and how to kind of get through adversity to make sure that you're being successful each and every time you take the court.
What are you thinking about going into this Indiana game? What are maybe some things you want to see? Indiana's, let's see where Indiana's at here. Their T rank, they're 52nd. They're 52nd. Their net. I was looking up Indiana in the net ranking, which is the NCAA released their net rankings on Monday, the first of the season, which play a part in the NCAA selection process.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. Indiana's analytics here on T rank, they're 52nd. Which makes them a quad 3, quad 2, quad 3, because it's a neutral. But net ranking, they're like 130. So I'm not sure the difference. I don't know why that is so dramatically different. I'm trying to see where they are on KenPom.
I think it speaks to the quality of competition.
So kind of all over the place with them.
Yeah, they haven't played an overly strong schedule just yet. I think the Maryland game is the only one that stands out to me as a quality opponent that they've got on the schedule so far. And I think that's the one that's coming up. They beat a struggling Louisville team and several other lower mid-majors. So just really not a
also UConn by 20.
Right. So not a great quality of a win for them just yet, which I think is probably hurting them. But again, like you said, when you play a team like this and you put it on a neutral court, it kind of moves it up a spot as far as what it's evaluated at as far as a net win goes. So you're saying that would be a quad 3. But what I want to see from Auburn is offensive efficiency all the way around. I want to see good spacing. I want to see good ball movement, make sure they're reversing the ball and not getting stagnant. From a defensive end, effort all the way through. I mean, I think you kind of saw that against Southern where you started out really hot. You thought that team was going to fold, and then they continued to play hard. I want to see Auburn play hard for, both halves of basketball, be efficient with it, share the basketball, and really just kind of play a better brand of basketball than what they played the past 2 games. They're capable of so much more. Let's see them kind of step into those roles that they were meant to play this year, and let's see if Chad Baker-Mazara can continue to get to the cup. Denver can find his stroke behind the line, continue to get good hustle plays off the bench from Chris Moore and Chaney Johnson, and really maybe feature Jalen down low a little bit more. I thought he was 3 of 4 on the block, and then they left some meat on the bone there with him. I think you can expose Indiana down low. I don't love their post play. So I think you can attack them there and see if we can't play from the inside out somewhat.
Yeah, Jalen. Jalen's just he is gonna end his career, and he's already got the most wins of any player in the history of Auburn basketball. And he's going to go out. I mean, whatever happens this year, nothing's going to change at this point. He's going to be, in my mind, he's going to be remembered as one of the more gifted, frustrating players. He's so gifted. He can handle the ball. He can shoot the 3 at a decent clip. He's so good around the basket. I mean, he's got great touch. He's tough. He can jump. You get him one-on-one down there, and he can work. He's hard to guard, but he will have games where he just disappears because he just I don't know. There's times where I wish he would just demand the ball, and he doesn't. But that's a side note. Yeah, Indiana's struggling shooting. They're 350th in the country in 3-point shooting percentage. They haven't hit more than 4 threes in a game all year. So they are not going to. They're not. You would think not. They're not going to shoot the lights out from the outside. That's by far their worst thing. They get to the free throw line a little bit, but yeah, they haven't played anybody. They played in Maryland. Maryland's nothing special. Played Harvard, Louisville. Louisville program is just in the trash right now. Florida Gulf Coast, Army, Wright State. They haven't played anybody, but they're about to play. They play Michigan on Tuesday.
Okay.
Michigan's not bad. Memphis beat Michigan, but that was fairly competitive. That's a true road game at Michigan. Then I don't know who scheduled this. They play Michigan, then they play Auburn Saturday, and they get a week off. They play Kansas the next Saturday in Bloomington. At least they get that at home, but that'll be an interesting matchup. And they played Morehead State, some others. So, yeah, they haven't really been tested. To me, it's a game in Atlanta. There should be 8,000+ Auburn fans there, I would imagine, between Atlanta and some driving over. I think State Farm probably holds 17 or something, if I had to guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
But,
and Indiana travels well. Yeah. Indiana travels well. So you'll get a lot of Indiana fans there as well. I wouldn't imagine to be as many Indiana fans as you would Auburn fans, but a good neutral site game for Auburn that hopefully we can come out, Justin, and start to finish kind of take control of this game. And that's really what you want to see. You want to see them treat it like the Notre Dame game where they came out start to finish, hit Notre Dame in the mouth. You would hope they don't have that slide towards the half. But if you do, you correct yourself and you play really well coming out of the half. And that's what you saw against Notre Dame.
Yeah, the bright side of the App State loss is let's just talk. Excuse me. The silver lining would be every team every team needs to go through some adversity at some point. This team, I think, especially because they're not a proven commodity. So they needed the App State game. They didn't need to lose, but the experience isn't a bad one. The Baylor experience isn't a bad one. It's good learning experiences. Now, I don't want to see them rack up any more losses because they do need a tournament resume. So you beat Indiana and you want to beat Southern Cal at home. Southern Cal's lost, I think, 3 games now. One was to Gonzaga. Some close losses. They're still top 20 type Ken Palm T-rank type team and has 2 first-round draft picks on their roster, and that's not including Bronny James. But you want to win those. Don't want to drop anymore. It's like, hey, I like the experience, but let's not do it. Let's not lose anymore. That's kind of where I'm at. But we'll see. I like their chances against Indiana there in Atlanta. We'll see what Auburn does. I think they'll have a good attitude, come back. Bruce talked about some guys being shell shocked at App State, so that's kind of what I'm talking about with that experience stuff. So, all right, Indiana. Hopefully, people will travel over to that game. It's at noon. I think it's at noon Central. I don't know. It's middle of the day. I can't remember if it's noon Central, noon Eastern. It's probably noon Central, 1 Eastern, if I had to guess. In State Farm Arena on Saturday. A little Auburn Indiana action. But we'll see if Auburn can get back on their winning ways. We'll have coverage at auburnlive.com. But yeah, everybody, hopefully join us once a week. We'll kick this thing out once we get rolling and get into SEC play and stuff. It'll be another fun year. I think Auburn's got a chance to compete. I don't see a dominant team. Kentucky looked good against Miami and then turned around and lost to UNC Wilmington, who is a team that App State blitzed, by the way. The team that just beat Kentucky, App State beat them by like 30. Tennessee has played a really hard schedule. They're going to be good. Florida's an up-and-coming team. Mississippi State got ranked and then turned around and lost 2 in a row, one of them to Southern. SEC's kind of all over the place. A&M's good. They've lost a couple. That's still a really good team. Arkansas kind of suffered a few losses. So nobody's just come out of the gate, running wild. It's going to be competitive, but this is not a league, even with what I've seen from Auburn, it's not a league where Auburn can't compete.
Agreed.
For a top 3 spot. I don't think, I think Tennessee's got an edge. I think A&M's got an edge. Kentucky's probably a little more talented, but this is not a league where Auburn can't compete with those teams and compete and at their best try to be top 3 when this is all said and done. They could finish 6th. That wouldn't surprise me, but I don't think it's a league where they can't compete to be top 3 in the league when this thing's said and done. So we'll see what kind of growth they can make as they move forward. Any last thoughts?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head that this is a team that has all the potential to be a top 6, top 5 team in the SEC this year, which is easily a tournament team and potentially a Sweet 16 team. I mean, I think that is the ceiling for this squad this year and something that can be accomplished. But it depends on the development and how that starts with the game against Indiana, right? Do they take that step forward in this game, control things from start to finish, and be a little bit more efficient on the offensive end? And if we see that, I think we'll start to have a little bit more belief, and you'll see the fan base relax some, because obviously the teeth were, they were gnashing some teeth, and, the comments on the board were a little salty, but get a big one against Indiana, move into one against UNC Asheville, and I think people will start to feel a lot better.
Yeah, yeah. And understand basketball is still different than football. You're not going to win them all. It's just a little bit different. All right. Appreciate everybody for joining us. Shout out to Session Cocktail again, sponsor of the show. Go check them out downtown Auburn, right there on Magnolia Avenue. Great people. Tell them that we sent you from auburnlive.com. Appreciate you, JHead.
No, thank you, buddy.
All right. We'll get this thing rolling. A little basketball pod once a week. Give the people what they want. Make sure and check that out. Like I said, we're going to aim for Tuesday mornings. You can check that out on YouTube and Spotify and Apple and all that good stuff. Appreciate everybody for joining us. JHead, I am Justin Hokanson. Go to auburnlive.com, subscribe. We'll see you next time. Bye.